On a freezing winter night in the city, a homeless black boy, used to hiding quietly in the shadows, stumbled upon an old woman collapsed on the sidewalk, trembling, blood trickling from her temple. Pushing past his fear and the judgmental eyes of strangers, he risked everything to get her to the hospital. But what he didn't know was that the frail old woman was a wealthy CEO, and that simple act of kindness would change his life forever. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. The sirens wailed through the cold city night, flashing red and blue against the towering buildings, while a voice crackled over the police radio. Suspect is approximately 14 years old, black male, last seen near 5th and Lexington. Possible involvement in theft. Proceed with caution. Pedestrians pulled their coats tighter, some exchanging wary glances. Others quickened their pace, avoiding the darkened alleyways. Fear lingered in the air like fog. Somewhere out there, they thought, a dangerous kid was roaming the streets, someone you shouldn't cross paths with. But down beneath the overpass, hidden from view, sat Jaden, his knees hugged to his chest, eyes wide, watching the world pass him by. His breath puffed in small clouds into the frigid night air, the cracked pavement beneath him stained with old graffiti and forgotten trash. Jaden wasn't a criminal. But the city didn't care about the difference between a homeless black kid and a threat. They only saw shadows, and tonight Jaden was just another shadow. A group of teenagers swaggered down the sidewalk above him, their laughter sharp as glass. One of them spotted him through the gaps in the concrete railing. "Hey, look at that! Stray dog under the bridge!" the boy sneered, his voice thick with mockery and something colder. Disdain. "Ain't you supposed to be locked up somewhere?" Jaden's gaze dropped to the ground. He said nothing. Experience taught him that silence was safer than pride. The group moved on, their words fading, but the sting of them stayed behind. Jaden exhaled, his small body curling tighter as the bitter wind snuck beneath his thin hoodie. He reached into the torn backpack beside him and pulled out half a stale sandwich, his only meal for the day. As he unwrapped it, a faint whimper drifted from the alleyway. He paused, listening. Another whimper, soft and trembling. Carefully, Jaden crept toward the sound. Behind a dumpster, huddled and shivering, was a scrawny stray dog, ribs pressing against its patchy fur, eyes wide with hunger and fear. For a moment, Jaden hesitated, his stomach clawed with its own emptiness. But his hand moved anyway, breaking off a piece of bread and holding it out. The dog crept forward, cautious but desperate, snatching the food with shaking jaws. Jaden managed a faint smile, the first one that day. Above him, the city kept moving, indifferent as ever. But down here, beneath the concrete and cold stairs, a boy who never expected kindness still chose to give it, even when no one ever looked twice at him. Unless they were afraid. The night deepened, heavy with a biting wind that snuck through alleyways and between broken fences. Jaden zipped his hoodie higher, pressing himself against the cold brick wall of the abandoned storefront. His stomach grumbled again, but he ignored it. The little warmth from helping the stray dog faded quickly, replaced by the sharp reminder that this city never stayed kind for long. Faint car horns echoed from distant streets. The sidewalks grew emptier as the hour stretched past midnight. Jaden shoved his hands into his pockets and drifted down the dimly lit side street, eyes scanning the ground for anything useful. A dropped coin, a forgotten snack, maybe an unlocked trash bin behind one of the restaurants. But as he turned the corner onto Whitmore Avenue, something made him stop. At first it looked like another pile of discarded blankets slumped against the lamppost. But something wasn't right. The fabric shifted slightly, a twitch, then a faint, strained groan. Jaden's heartbeat quickened. His first instinct screamed to turn around. Keep walking. Don't get involved. But his feet stayed rooted in place. His eyes adjusted to the faint orange glow of the flickering streetlight. And that's when he saw her. An elderly woman lay curled on the freezing sidewalk. Her thin silver hair clung to her face, matted with sweat. Blood trickled from a small cut along her temple, staining the pale collar of her coat. Her lips were cracked and bluish, her frail chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. Jaden's mouth went dry. The city wasn't kind to people like him, or her. For a long moment he simply stared. His mind ran in circles, listing all the reasons not to help. What if someone thought he hurt her? What if this was some setup, a trap? He could already hear the accusations, the whispers, the disgusted looks. He'd seen them before. But then her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and wide with fear. Her thin hand reached weakly toward him, trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Help, please," she rasped. Her voice cracked with desperation, barely more than a whisper. They took everything." Jaden hesitated, the air sharp in his lungs. His pulse thundered in his ears, but he couldn't walk away, not after what the world had done to him. He wasn't going to be that kind of person. Swallowing hard, he knelt beside her. Hey, it's okay," he muttered, though his voice wavered. "You're going to be all right." The woman's glassy eyes darted around the empty street, panic creeping across her face. Her words tumbled out in broken fragments. I can't find home. It's cold." Jaden's gaze flicked to the shadows. No one else was coming. No cars, no pedestrians, just him and her, forgotten by the city. He fumbled in his pocket for the old flip phone he kept, a battered thing someone had thrown away weeks ago. It barely held a charge, but maybe, just maybe, the screen flickered to life, and he punched in 911 with shaking fingers. But the call wouldn't go through. No signal, dead zone. "Of course," Jaden muttered bitterly under his breath. The woman let out another weak groan, trying to shift, but her limbs barely moved. Jaden could see how pale her face had become, the fine wrinkles etched deep with pain. Her coat, expensive-looking under the grime, hung loosely on her frail frame. The sharp scent of blood and something sterile lingered in the air. Panic tightened in his chest, but Jaden forced himself to breathe. If no one else was coming, he had to figure this out, fast. His eyes darted across the street. Abandoned storefronts, boarded-up windows, flickering signs, no one, nothing. But a rusted shopping cart sat beside an overflowing dumpster nearby, its wheels barely intact. Crude, but maybe. Jaden stood abruptly, wiping his palms on his jeans. His voice cracked with nerves as he spoke. I'm going to get you to the hospital, all right? Just hang on." The woman mumbled incoherently, her fingers twitching weakly toward him again. Jaden dragged the cart over with effort, its wheels squealing in protest. He winced, glancing around nervously, but no one paid attention. That was the one gift of being invisible. With careful hands, he helped ease the woman onto the cart, bundling her coat around her as best he could. She barely stirred, her breath shallow and faint. Jaden's heart hammered against his ribs. The streets stretched long and unfamiliar ahead, but he knew where the hospital was, 3 avenues over, near the nicer part of town. It wasn't close, and pushing a rusty cart with a barely conscious old woman wasn't exactly subtle. Still, he gripped the handle tightly. His fear hadn't disappeared, but his choice was made. As he pushed the cart down the sidewalk, the cold gnawed at his fingers, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed sharp, scanning every alleyway, every corner, expecting trouble. And trouble found him sooner than expected. Halfway down the block, a group of men lounged near a liquor store's back entrance, their voices low, their eyes sharp. One of them, tall, broad-shouldered, with a jagged scar down his cheek, straightened when he spotted Jaden. "Hey!" the man called, stepping into Jaden's path. "What you got there, kid?" Jaden's grip tightened on the cart. His throat closed with fear, but he kept moving, trying to steer around them. "Yo, hold up!" Another man blocked the other side. "That ain't your grandma, is it? What, you robbing the old bat? Trying to make off with her purse?" The group laughed, but there was no humor in it, only the edge of threat. Jaden's pulse roared in his ears. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The woman whimpered softly, her hand twitching. Something sharp twisted in Jaden's chest. The fear, the shame. It all boiled into something harder. He straightened his spine, his voice quiet but steady. "She's hurt. I'm taking her to the hospital," he said, eyes locked on the scarred man's. For a long second, silence. The group exchanged glances. Then the man with the scar snorted, dismissing him with a wave. "Crazy little hero. Whatever, man. Go save the day." Reluctantly, they stepped aside, the others muttering under their breath. Jaden didn't waste a second. He pushed the cart faster, his legs shaking, his heart pounding like a war drum. The hospital lights weren't visible yet. The night was far from over. But for the first time, Jaden wasn't running away. He was running towards something. Jaden's arms ached as he pushed the shopping cart along the cracked sidewalk, its rusted wheels protesting with every uneven slab of concrete. His breath came in short bursts, fogging the air before him, but he never slowed. The city around him blurred into towering shadows and flickering streetlights, the faint hum of traffic in the distance offering little comfort. The old woman remained slumped in the cart, her head tilted to one side, eyes fluttering closed again. Her face had grown even paler under the yellow streetlight, the dried smear of blood along her temple stark against her fragile skin. Jaden's jaw clenched. He couldn't let her fall asleep. Every movie he'd ever seen screamed at him that people who passed out after hitting their head might not wake up, and tonight that wasn't going to happen. Not on his watch. "Hey," he called softly, reaching down to squeeze her thin wrist. Her skin was cold, alarmingly so. "Stay with me, okay? Almost there." Her lips parted, dry and cracked, barely forming words. "Home? I can't find it." A pang twisted in Jaden's chest. There was a brokenness in her voice that he recognized too well, the lost, hollow sound of someone forgotten by the world. The hospital wasn't far now, a few more blocks. Past the shuttered convenience store, across the wide intersection that always reeked of exhaust. He'd memorized these streets in survival, but tonight they stretched longer than ever. Every step, every push of the cart, his mind buzzed with what-ifs. What if she didn't make it? What if the hospital turned them away? What if the cops saw him and thought he'd hurt her? Jaden shook the thoughts from his head. He couldn't afford to spiral, not now. Up ahead, the looming white facade of St. Vincent's Medical Center finally came into view, its emergency sign glowing red against the night. Relief swelled in his chest, only to be replaced by a sharp wave of doubt. 2 security guards stood by the entrance, thick jackets zipped to their necks, eyes sharp and impassive. Jaden slowed his steps, his heart beat thunderous in his ears. He'd seen that look before, suspicion wrapped in uniform. The same look shopkeepers gave him when he passed their stores, the same look the cops flashed when they patrolled his neighborhood. Jaden forced his legs to move. The wheels squeaked louder as he approached. The taller guard stepped forward, his hand raised. "Hold up, kid." His eyes drifted to the woman slumped in the cart, his brow furrowing. What is this?" Jaden's mouth went dry. "She's hurt," he blurted. "I found her. She needs help." The second guard, broader with a tight jaw, stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Where's her ID? You know her?" "No, She was on the street, bleeding." Jaden's voice cracked under the weight of his fear. The taller guard exchanged a glance with his partner. The doubt was clear. "Look, kid, you can't just—" The words burst from Jaden's throat, raw, desperate. "I didn't do anything. Just please, help her." For a moment, silence. Even the traffic sounds seemed distant. Behind the glass doors, a nurse noticed the commotion and stepped outside. Her dark eyes swept over the scene. The frail old woman, the trembling boy, the battered shopping cart. Something softened in her expression. "Let them through," she told the guards firmly, already reaching for her radio. The guards hesitated, then stepped aside. Relief hit Jaden so hard his knees nearly buckled. He followed the nurse as she guided the cart through the automatic doors, the warmth of the hospital washing over him like a shock to the system. Doctors and nurses sprang into action. Voices rose with clinical urgency. A stretcher replaced the cart. Machines beeped. The woman vanished behind swinging double doors, swallowed by the flurry of medical care. And just like that, Jaden was left standing alone in the too bright lobby, his breath still uneven, the cold of the street clinging stubbornly to his clothes. The nurse returned after a moment, her brow furrowed as she studied him. "You with her?" Jaden hesitated, unsure how to answer. I just found her. She was alone." Her expression softened again. "You did the right thing bringing her here." But Jaden barely heard her. His body felt weightless, like the fear and adrenaline had drained him completely. His hands trembled as they fell to his sides. The nurse gently squeezed his shoulder. "What's your name?" "Jaden," he whispered. Before she could ask more, voices erupted down the hall. The double doors burst open, and a flood of people poured in. Hospital administrators, security personnel, even a suited man barking into his phone. And at their center, frantic and wide-eyed, was a woman Jaden vaguely recognized from TV. Sharp-featured, expensive coat, heels clicking rapidly against the tile. Jaden faded back toward the wall instinctively, watching as the group crowded around a doctor near the nurses' station. Snippets of conversation floated his way. "Found wandering, attacked, CEO of Vanmark Industries, police are investigating." Jaden's heart stuttered. CEO? It hit him in a slow, sinking realization. The frail woman he'd pushed across freezing sidewalks wasn't just some forgotten soul like him. She was Eleanor Vanmark, the Eleanor Vanmark, a name printed on billboards and the sides of skyscrapers. His gaze darted toward the exit. He shouldn't be here. A homeless black kid hanging around a rich, injured old woman? He already knew how that looked. The guards, the doctors, all their wary eyes would turn on him soon enough. The news crews, the police. It didn't matter what actually happened. People like him didn't get the benefit of the doubt. Jaden turned toward the door, his pulse hammering, his gut twisted with unease. But just as he reached the lobby's edge, a frail voice echoed behind him. "Wait, the boy—" Jaden froze, his head turned, eyes wide. Eleanor Vanmark, pale but conscious, was being wheeled down the hall on a stretcher, her hand weakly lifted, her tired eyes searching the space, landing on him. A dozen heads turned with hers. Whispers rippled. Jaden's breath caught in his throat. His first instinct screamed, "Run!" But her gaze, fragile yet steady, held him in place. And for the first time in a long time, Jaden wasn't sure if disappearing was what he wanted anymore. For a long moment, the hospital lobby was frozen in place. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, conversations hushed. Even the security guards stiffened near the doors as every eye turned toward Eleanor Vanmark, and then, inevitably, to the boy she was pointing at. And then, inevitably, to the boy she was pointing at. Jaden's pulse roared in his ears. His first instinct, the one that had kept him alive all these years, screamed at him to bolt, turn, vanish into the city like a shadow. It was safer there, hidden behind alleyways and locked doors, far from curious eyes and sharp words. But something rooted him to the polished floor. Maybe it was the way Eleanor's hand trembled in the air, weak but insistent. Maybe it was the quiet clarity in her eyes. Not fear, not suspicion, but something else. Recognition? Gratitude? He wasn't sure. The suited man beside her, tall, rigid, expensive watch glinting beneath his cuff, followed her gaze to Jaden. His eyes narrowed with calculation, lips pressed into a thin, unreadable line. "Ma'am, you need rest," the man urged quietly, gently pressing her hand down, but Eleanor's gaze never wavered. "The boy, help me," she murmured. Her voice thin but steady. A ripple of confusion passed through the group. The nurse beside Jaden looked up, surprise softening her features. Even the security guards exchanged glances. Jaden's throat tightened. His mind scrambled for what to say, but all he could feel was the weight of their attention. Heavy, unfamiliar, dangerous. The suited man approached, his steps measured, eyes cool and appraising. "Is that true?" he asked, voice low, professional. "You found Mrs. Vanmark tonight?" Jaden hesitated, his words catching somewhere between fear and uncertainty. His instinct still warned him they could twist this, turn it against him, but lying would only make it worse. I saw her on the street, he admitted, voice quiet but clear. She was hurt. I brought her here. A beat of silence stretched between them. The man studied him a moment longer, then nodded curtly. Not warm, not trusting, but acknowledging. Behind him, Eleanor's eyes softened, her expression growing faintly dazed as exhaustion tugged at her features. The nurse beside her adjusted the blankets over her frail frame, gently steering the wheelchair toward the elevator. Before the doors slid closed, Eleanor's gaze found Jaden's one last time. Her lips parted, a faint, weary smile ghosting across them. And then she was gone, the group disappearing into the upper floors of the hospital. The tension in the lobby eased. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. The guards shifted back to their posts. But Jaden stood frozen, the adrenaline draining from his limbs, leaving him hollow and unsteady. The warmth of the hospital felt suffocating now. Too bright, too clean, too far from the concrete and shadows he understood. The nurse, the same one who'd let him in, returned, her voice gentle but firm. "You're welcome to sit for a while, but do you have someone to call? Family?" Jaden shook his head before he could stop himself, the answer instinctive. His fingers curled into the frayed edges of his hoodie. The nurse hesitated, her eyes softening in understanding. She didn't press. Hours slipped by in a blur. Jaden sat curled in a corner chair, watching people come and go. Doctors with furrowed brows, nurses pushing carts, exhausted patients clutching paperwork. He kept his head down, invisible again, just how he liked it, until the suited man returned. Jaden spotted him across the lobby, crisp coat neatly buttoned, polished shoes silent on the tile. He approached with quiet authority, stopping just in front of Jaden's chair. "She wants to see you," the man said simply. Jaden's stomach twisted. "Why?" The man studied him for a moment, unreadable. "You helped her, that's enough." Uncertainty gnawed at Jaden, but his legs moved before his doubts could stop them. The elevator ride was silent, the bright, sterile halls of the upper floor unfamiliar and intimidating. They stopped outside a private room. The suited man opened the door, stepping aside. Inside, Eleanor lay propped against crisp white pillows, pale but alert, her silver hair brushed neatly from her face. The room was quiet, save for the steady beep of monitors. For a long second, Jaden hovered near the door, ready to retreat at the first wrong look, the first wrong word. But Eleanor's eyes found him. Steady, kind, without pity. "You didn't run," she said softly, a hint of amusement threading through her weak voice. Jaden shifted awkwardly, unsure how to respond. "Didn't really seem like I could," he mumbled. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. She gestured weakly to the chair beside her bed. "Sit." Cautiously, Jaden obeyed. The chair creaked beneath him, the stark white walls pressing in. For a moment neither spoke. Then Eleanor exhaled slowly, her frail hand resting on the blanket. "I tend to get turned around these days," she admitted quietly. "Doctors call it cognitive lapses. Comes with age, I suppose. I don't always remember how I end up places." Her eyes darkened faintly. "But I remember you." Jaden's chest tightened. You shouldn't have been out there alone," he said quietly, unable to stop himself. His voice wavered between concern and disbelief. "Someone like you, people would have helped." Eleanor chuckled weakly, her smile tinged with bitterness. "You'd be surprised how invisible even I can become when I look fragile." Her eyes softened. "But you saw me." Jaden looked down, fingers twisting in his hoodie. "Figured I know what it's like when no one does." For the first time in a long while he let the words hang in the air, raw and unpolished. He expected discomfort, maybe awkwardness, but Eleanor simply nodded, understanding flickering in her tired gaze. "I owe you my life," she said simply. Jaden shifted in his seat, unease prickling under his skin. I just—" "You chose to care," Eleanor cut in gently. "When you didn't have to, that matters." Her gaze lingered on him, quiet but firm. Stay a little longer, will you? Humor an old woman. We can talk. About you, too. For once, Jaden didn't feel the need to disappear, and for the first time in years, maybe he didn't want to. The days after that night blurred together like rain streaking down a window. Quiet, cautious, full of things Jaden wasn't used to. Warm rooms, soft voices, people who didn't look at him like a problem waiting to happen. Eleanor had stayed in the hospital for 2 more days under observation. Jaden had lingered around the building longer than he'd admit, sitting on the cold benches outside, debating with himself whether to disappear. It would have been easy. Familiar. Safer. But when her assistant, the suited man he'd later learned was named Marcus, found him outside with that unreadable expression, Jaden had followed, not because he trusted them, but because, deep down, a small part of him wanted to believe this wasn't just another temporary flicker of decency that the world would snatch away. Now, standing outside the towering glass building of Eleanor's condo complex, Jaden stared up at the impossible height of it. The reflection of the city lights danced across the polished surface like stars he could never touch. "This doesn't make sense," Jaden muttered, tugging at the frayed hem of his hoodie. His voice was tight with suspicion, with the disbelief life had carved into his bones. Eleanor, wrapped in a simple wool coat, smiled faintly beside him. Her face was still pale from recovery, but her eyes held a quiet certainty. "It doesn't have to make sense to be real," she replied softly. "Most of the good things in life don't." Jaden didn't answer. His fists stayed buried deep in his pockets, his body tense with the urge to turn, to run, but his legs stayed rooted to the spotless pavement. Inside, the condo was nothing like the cramped shelters or cracked sidewalks he knew. It was warm, not just from the central heating, but from the little details, family photos tucked along shelves, a faint hint of lavender lingering in the air, a dog-eared book resting beside an armchair. It wasn't the kind of place he'd pictured a billionaire living in. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't cold. It was human. The hours trickled by quietly. Eleanor moved with the slow care of someone still healing, offering him tea he'd never had the nerve to taste, telling stories of cities and people Jaden had only seen in magazines, discarded at bus stops. She didn't pry. She didn't ask about the alleys, the hunger, the bruises life had stacked on him. But her eyes said she already knew. Later, as the city hummed outside the window, Eleanor leaned forward, her expression serious but gentle. "You could stay," she said simply. No pretense, no grand offer gilded in false promises, just words hanging heavy between them. Jaden's stomach twisted. "Stay? I could use help around here," she added with a faint smile, gesturing to the quiet apartment. "And you could use a roof, some quiet, a chance to breathe." Jaden shifted, unease knotting in his chest. His first thought was a reflex. No one gives without taking. No one helps without strings. That was how the world worked. But Eleanor didn't look like she was bargaining. She looked tired, honest, the kind of honest that didn't expect him to trust her right away. Still, the words tangled on his tongue. "I'm not." He hesitated, swallowing hard. "I'm not the kind of kid people want around." Eleanor's eyes softened, her voice firm but warm. "You're exactly the kind of person I want around, someone who doesn't turn their back on a stranger." Her words hung there, quiet but undeniable. Jaden looked down at his scuffed shoes, the worn fabric of his hoodie, the dirt under his nails that never seemed to wash off completely. Part of him screamed to leave, to go back to the edges where no one could hurt him with kindness that vanished the next day. But another part, small, fragile, unfamiliar, wondered what would happen if, for once, he didn't. The silence stretched. Eleanor didn't rush him. She simply sat, watching, waiting, giving him what few people ever had: space to decide. Finally, Jaden exhaled, the tension in his shoulders loosening just enough. He met her gaze, uncertain but steady. "I'll stay, for now," he added quickly, voice guarded, still braced for disappointment. Eleanor's smile was soft but victorious in a quiet, knowing way. "For now works." The weeks that followed weren't perfect. Jaden flinched at sudden knocks on the door. He kept his backpack hidden by instinct. He took days to believe the food in the fridge was for him. But little by little the walls cracked. The first time he laughed, really laughed, at Eleanor's dry jokes, it startled them both. The first time she let him walk the small rescue dog she kept, he came back. The first time he found himself standing by the apartment window, watching the city lights without the urge to run, it scared him how much he wanted to stay. Months passed. The world outside remained sharp, divided, messy. But in here, in this small, improbable space, the edges softened. One evening, as they shared tea by the window, Eleanor set her cup down and spoke quietly, her words steady but full of unspoken weight. "You know," she began, eyes distant with reflection, "the night you found me, I thought maybe that was it for me, that no one would notice, no one would care." Jaden's gaze dropped to his hands, calloused and worn, fingers curling loosely around his cup. "But you did," Eleanor continued, "and it reminded me, kindness doesn't always come in the package you expect." Her eyes met his, unwavering. "I'd like to return the favor, if you'll let me." Jaden's throat tightened, the familiar walls rising instinctively, but they faltered, just enough. His voice was quiet, the words unsure but honest. "Maybe. We both needed saving that night." Eleanor smiled faintly, the city lights reflecting in her tired eyes. "Maybe we still do." And for once, Jaden didn't look for the exit. He looked ahead. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.